Hi everyone, it's Lynn Love here, and thank you for watching this video and joining me as I speak about the last year of being in Chinese medicine school, getting my doctorates in Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and I talk about other topics such as Yin and Yang energetics and the energetics of feminine leadership as well. And it sounds like a lot of different topics that don't relate to each other, but they do. And I know in my experience, I've been going on this journey for 5 years studying Chinese medicine, and it's just opened me up to so many different worlds and understanding of our life and my life and the world that we're connected in. So I'm super excited for you to join me as I dive in and have some tea and tell you about my journey. So today I'm having some jasmine green tea. I'll be brewing it throughout this whole conversation, and I want to just dive into being in my last year of Chinese medicine school. And I get a lot of messages of, should I go? What is it like? What should I know before I enter into the school? And all of those questions are amazing questions, but this path is so incredibly personal and subjective, and the why and the mission behind it is going to be completely different for everyone. So I would say if you are thinking about going to get your doctorates in Chinese medicine, then make sure you have a solid foundation, a ground to stand on that is created by your mission and your why. The reason why I say that is because now that I'm in my last year, I have next semester and then I graduate, I've been thinking a lot about my why. Why am I doing this? At the very end of it all, who is this for? Is it for me? Is it for other people? Is it to give back to my family? So all of these questions come up, especially when you're about to graduate. And so I really invite you, when you're thinking about going to Chinese medicine school, is think about your why. So I want to give you a moment here, even if you're not thinking about getting your doctorates, ask yourself what your why is. I'm going to give you a couple moments to do that as I drink some tea. So good. I can drink tea all day. It's interesting because now that I'm in my last semester, I've learned so much. I definitely am such a different person from when I first started the program. And just know that when you begin this 4-year, 5-year journey, however long it takes you, actually, you're going to transform, you're going to morph, you're going to turn into this new person, and many of the changes are positive, but also many of the things that you experience are going to be challenges and are going to ask you to step up into, your greatest version of yourself. And so a lot of that is character building, resilience building, strength building, and it's going to ask you to really take an account of, again, this why and what you value. So a lot of that for me has been, if I can share my why here, big piece of it is to give back to my family, to give back to my mother. My mother was the first person to introduce Chinese medicine to me through gua sha, through the elements, through all of these different pieces. She used to cook me congee with Chinese herbs and all of these things. And as a kid, I used to think, man, like, this is always so weird, and I just want to be like a normal American kid. But I came back to the medicine as an adult, and I was in a corporate job before, and I was really trying to figure out what my path was, and I ended up coming back to Chinese medicine and acupuncture and thinking this is a big piece of what I'm supposed to do and an offering to my ancestors. So I'm so beyond grateful for that. And to also note, today is a very auspicious day because it is the Lunar New Year of 2023. So for Chinese New Year's and Vietnamese New Year's is on the same day. Each one of us are going to be celebrating that and going to be celebrating this entering into the lunar calendar. And so the lunar calendar and the Gregorian calendar are about 21 to 51 days apart. So typically Chinese New Year's, Vietnamese New Year's will be like later on in January or even sometimes in February. So yes, Happy New Year's to all of you who celebrate. And I'm wearing the red, and I've been also honoring my ancestors through tea and offerings as well. And so I invite you to take a moment to really honor the people that came before you in this path that you are on. And just know that even if that feels scary to do, it's so natural because it's already inside of you. This honoring of yourself and this honoring of your blood is actually honoring the people before you. So let's just give a moment while I drink some tea to offer that to the people who came before us. I'm just gonna have another one because that was so yummy. And it's interesting because we sometimes lose touch with these natural part of ourselves. Like ancestor worship is such a big part of my culture growing up, and was just so immersed, like so integrated, and just like a daily part of what my mother did. And so to see myself actually stepping into that is really beautiful, and to the Chinese medicine is also amazing as well. And so before I actually move on into the next topic of yin and yang and nature and coming back to nature, if you are really thinking about entering into getting your doctorates in Chinese medicine, the first 1 or 2 years is going to be memorization. It's going to be learning a different language of not only Chinese, but also learning a different language of the body and medicine and how to help people using their body and the knowledge and the language of their body. And so yes, just know that it's a journey, and of course you kind of ebb and flow with it. There was a point in my journey where I was so close to quitting and not wanting to finish and just going through like all these different phases and things. But really the strongest piece here that you learn is the commitment to the medicine, the devotion to the medicine. And of course, that ends up not being the case for you. That's also okay. And just remembering that you are always guided, you are always supported and loved in any sort of capacity that you embark on in this medicine. Sometimes you don't really feel it when you're kind of like in the thick of school and doing things, but really you have to understand that this medicine has been cultivated over thousands of years by people way before you. So again, our ancestors of the medicine have been cultivating this medicine for a long time, and also with the mindset that there's going to be people going forth using this medicine for helping others and healing the world. So let's take a moment for that too. And as I drink some tea here, I would also say that you kind of hit the slump of like what I'm saying, of like, should I just keep doing this, and I don't know if this is the right path. And that's normal. It's totally normal. So don't worry that if you're experiencing that, then it's okay. One part I do have to say is that we often go through the 1-2 year mark. You learn a lot about the basics of Chinese medicine, but you have to also understand that this is a lifelong journey. For me, when I graduate, I'm still learning, I'm still a student, right? Yet you'll go through these kind of ebbs and flows with that knowledge as well. So when you hit your 3rd to 4th year, you start entering into the clinic, you start really getting your hands like deep in the medicine and learning the techniques and needling and all of those beautiful things, which kind of boosts your energy. At least that was my case. You definitely get this like slump, and then you start having a little bit more energy, or you just have a lot of learning in between, right? The biggest piece for me, and something that I would love to pass on to anybody that's embarking on this journey, is learning self-care and learning self-love during the program. So not doing it after, not, forgetting about it, but the biggest piece is, yes, we're here to take care of others. Yes, we're here to learn this medicine, but at the same time, we're here to help ourselves and care for ourselves. I would also say, I'm not sure that everyone would agree on this with me, but most practitioners are sometimes the best practitioners, but then the worst patients, right? So if they treat people and are really good at holding space, but it's often really hard for them to just take care of themselves and go get treatments and go just relax. It's so hard sometimes, especially when you're in the thick of it with school. I totally understand. One thing I have to say is that you start to kind of gain more energy as you're helping patients, you're really applying the knowledge, and you hit the point of, okay, well, what's next? There's these next marks I have to do, the exams and the licensure, but what's next? What's next for me in this medicine? And that's a really great question. And honestly, where I'm at, and it's pretty overwhelming to think, well, what's next? I have to jump and do the next thing that feels really aligned for me. And of course, there's so many different options. A lot of acupuncturists are getting opportunities to work in hospitals, to work in different clinics, collaborating with other acupuncturists and other integrative clinics and things like that. I know of a lot of nonprofits that are happening, that are catering to integrative medicine, acupuncture. So there's so many opportunities that are opening for acupuncturists these days. It's so exciting, but at the same time, it's overwhelming because you want to do things that feel aligned and resonate with you, and that you don't feel like it's going to be a mistake, right? So it takes, again, that why am I doing this? Why did I do this in the first place? And also a recalibration of, well, I am who I am now, and so where does that fit in this equation, and how do I then align myself with the opportunity that's going to serve me the best, right? And is going to align with my life purpose and my life mission in this medicine and in the broad scheme of things. So yes, that is kind of my just overall overview from a 4th year perspective. Actually 5th year. And just know that you're so loved and supported and guided through the medicine. I know that's been my experience. There's been moments of me feeling not that way, but when I really tune in and take a moment to just breathe and just slow down, I know that I'm in the right place. I know that there's lots of magic here that I'm here to learn and share. And so it's a really, really beautiful path. So yes, and very, very needed. So on that note, we're gonna cheers to anyone joining that path. I'm gonna drink a little tea. Oh my goodness. One thing I have to say is that this medicine actually helps you return back to nature. It returns back to these natural principles in which our body operates from, and all things around us operate from as well. So a lot of the medicine is based off of Yin and Yang and has its fundamentals in Taoism and Confucianism and also parts of Buddhism as well. So there's a lot of like deep kind of philosophical history behind Chinese medicine, but the more practical things have actually come from the principles of nature, such as yin and yang. So we'll talk a little bit about yin and yang, and then I'll dive into how that also ends up being our way of leadership. So as we know, as many of us may know, yin and yang are together. It is a cycle that happens. It is also describing qualities that exist in the universe and nature and all things. You can actually use yin and yang to describe plants and trees and the sun and the moon and, you know, yourself and all things, right? So everything is kind of broken down to these micro elements and these micro qualities, right? Almost like you have a molecule and an atom, and so these have this really small particles. And so yin and yang in a way is describing that. It gives a qualitative understanding to life itself. So when we talk about the sun is going to be yang, it's going to be bright, it's going to be shining, it's going to be outward, it's going to be like creating and pushing its life force energy onto life and giving life to earth. But at the same time, yin is going to be describing the moon and things that are like within the feminine quality or energetic or nature. So it's going to be more childlike. It's going to be representing the dark side of the mountain. It's going to be describing colds and wet and moist and fluids and water and deep earth soil, right? So that's going to be yin. And so you can see that they almost represent the opposite here. And when they represent the opposite, then it gives you an understanding that these two actually are very interconnected. So there's actually laws with yin and yang. They're interconnected. So when you have yin, when you have the moon, you also must have the sun. And they coexist because one another. They're interdependent of each other. Another one is that they're constantly moving together. They're constantly moving and turning into each other and being interchangeable and all of those things. So there's this really beautiful natural rhythm in our life of yin and yang. Yet sometimes we kind of fall out of balance with that cycle, that natural rhythm, which oftentimes we say in Chinese medicine, we bring the body back into balance with the natural rhythms of life. So we have this natural yin and yang kind of ebb and flow going on, the sun and the moon rise, right? But our bodies tend to get stuck. And our bodies tend to get stuck, either it's hyper yang, hyper yin, hyper yang, hyper yin, or vice versa, excess yin, hyper, deficient yang. It's constantly moving in this little ebb and flow. And that's when, in fact, our bodies are going against nature. And we can dive into that so much more. But we're going to really focus on yin and yang and their relationships to our body and to our life. And so even within our body, we have yin and yang, right? So our heart is the most yang organ of the yin organs. So each major organ that we have, our liver, our spleen, right? Our kidneys, our lungs, our heart, all of those are yin organs. And then the yang pair of those organs, so again, yin and yang come into pair. The yang organs are in fact their pair organs. So for the heart, there's the SI, or small intestine. For the kidney, there's the urinary bladder. For the lung, there's a large intestine. For the liver, there's the gallbladder, and so on. You also have the pericardium, which is the yin organ. Then you have the sanjiao, the triple warmer, the three parts of the body that represent the waterways. And that is the yang part of the organ. Oftentimes they also say in Chinese medicine that yang organs represent the function, right? It is moving something, it's creating action, it's creating this movement. It's that masculine like quality of going forth and taking decisive action on something. The yin organs are in fact holding substance and holding tissues and holding water and information. So that in itself is yin. So all of those yin organs are paired with yang organs, and they coexist, are independent of each other, and are constantly turning to one another and creating life. So how does this relate to leadership? I've been reading this book called Coaching the Artist Within by Eric M. Maisel, I believe. I will link the book below. And it's been blowing my mind because there's one aspect of that book that talks about eliminating the dualities. And what this actually means is eliminating the duality between yin and yang. Because we have yin and we have yang. These are dualities. These are saying these are two opposite things. Oftentimes we get stuck. We get stuck in being too yin or maybe being too yang, and we get stuck. When really what needs to happen, what is natural for us, is to actually have an interrelationship with both, and to be weaving in and out of yin and yang. So there's an example in the book that talks about a man who is a musician who wants to go out of his way, who wants to start to create a band. But his position in his old bands have been more yin. He has been taking a more yin stance, a yin state in his life, which means, he's been kind of allowing someone else to lead. He's been like a little bit more of a stand back, a little bit more submissive, a little bit more hands off the process. Not so much about leading, but allowing, right? That's more of a yin way. And so yang is more about taking the center stage. It's about really going for it, making the decisions, being the leader of that band. And so he realized that for most of his life, he took so much of a yin stance. When he was being moved, he was desiring a yang way, a yang stance, and a new way of doing things. But he did not see the connection between this, the yin, and the yang, because he was so stuck in the duality, in his own way of being, which was focused and more familiar with the yin way of doing things. Whereas the yang way of doing things was quite opposite from what he was used to. So he was actually moving towards being more yang, doing more yang type of leadership. So this is what I mean when I'm talking about yang way of leading, yang way of doing things, the yin way of doing things. And so it's really interesting that we can use these principles of nature in our own life. And so it's a beautiful way of taking this and applying it to other things, such as our relationship, such as our health, such as our own personal growth. Where have we been too yang? Where have we've been too yin? And how can we then flow between each of these states of being? Because we always have those natural ways, right? If the sun was up all the time, then we would be in fact missing the moon. And if the moon was up all the time and it was nighttime, then we would in fact be missing the light and the sun. So I'm going to be leaving it here, and I want to thank anyone for joining me in this video, and I hope you took a gem of wisdom out. And I am wishing you many blessings on this Lunar New Year, and have a beautiful week wherever you are. All right, thank you.